No. Man, I don't even know how long it's been since I made a video. I need to come up with something, if only. Hey, thanks for finally opening it. What did you get back here?
It's me, like a shark, do. I got shit, we're doing Sharks Week, it's Sharks Week!
Well, I guess it's nice to see you again, like a shark, but I wasn't really wanting to do another Sharks Week. The movies we did last year weren't that great.
Oh, you better believe it's Sharks Week again. Yeah, we're doing this again. I know it kind of said last year, but you're gonna do it again. You gotta live it, I promise.
What do we even have this year? The Black Demon, No Way Up, and what the hell is N supposed to be? Yes, it is once again that time of year. It is Sharks Week. And for those of you that weren't here last year, Sharks Week is a week dedicated to shark movies and the sharks within them. That means throughout this week there will be several videos talking about a lot of different shark movies, so be sure to come back every day until the week is over. And before we introduce the first movie, let's roll the intro. And our first film is The Black Demon. And this actually came out theatrically last year. I could have talked about it for last Sharks Week, but I didn't want to, as I wasn't able to get a DVD copy on time because of when the home release came out. And the reason I do that, I personally like being able to own the movies that I'm going to talk about, with something that's exclusively streaming being the exception. Now, something I remember about this movie before it came out was I actually saw the trailer and thought, this is just another one of those horror movies not releasing around Halloween, so you know it's not going to be that great. But it looked interesting enough, but then once it released, I heard nothing about it. This came out April 28th, 2023, and then just about a month later, it was already on streaming so you could watch it at home instead. And despite it going to streaming May 30th, it didn't come to DVD until July 11th. So the reason I selected this and the other two movies you saw in the intro is that I wanted to do a little comparison between the three. I wanted to see how much does budget affect a movie, and how much does the platform it releases on affect its overall reception and quality. Because this first movie we have going up was made on a budget of $10 million, which is pretty low for a theatrical release. But something else worth noting about these movies, and I could be dead wrong about one of them, is they didn't have like huge name talent, so you know not a ton of the budget went to a certain actor or anything like that. But seeing as this movie went to theaters and didn't make its budget back until it went to streaming, then that says a lot about modern moviegoers. The movie opens up with a couple guys on an oil rig plotting to do something. We're also getting our opening credits during this, and I saw something interesting. This was made in part with BuzzFeed Studios for some reason, apparently. And of course, if you couldn't guess it, this is going to be our first shark attack, but we don't really get too good a glimpse of the shark, which is a running thing in a lot of shark movies, so that's not necessarily that unique to this one. We then cut to our family, which can briefly be explained like this.
Hey, you! Do you know what kind of train this is? Do you know what kind of train this is? Well, do ya?
And with some actual explanation, the movie follows an oil inspector taking his family to Baja California, Mexico, on a vacation/work trip. The town itself is really run down. It doesn't look all that nice like they were expecting. It just seems like a dumb thing. It's like, I got work to do, let me bring the family into a part of the world I don't normally casually go to. And if it wasn't bad enough he's taking his family to work, the locals aren't exactly all that welcoming, particularly to him. Thank God his wife knows Spanish. The woman playing the wife isn't actually Mexican, but she is playing one in here. It's supposed to be like they're going to a place, I guess, around where she grew up or something. But if anyone was curious, no, the actress herself is not Mexican. I necessarily don't have a problem with it, but I know some people might. Thought I'd point it out. And another thing worth pointing out, if you're wondering something about, it's like, why are all the Mexicans in this kind of scary? The director, Adrian Grunberg, I am convinced this guy is scared of Mexico and Mexicans. And I don't mean that like he's racist or something, I mean that it's like he sees this stuff about certain things going on there, and then that's just what he's fixated on when he's making these movies. Because Adrian Grunberg also made the movies Get the Gringo with Mel Gibson and Rambo Last Blood. And both those movies do not exactly paint the nicest picture of Mexico. Big part of the reason it was important to point out that the kid was kind of a know-it-all is that he's purposely learning stuff about where they go and the history and culture of things, which is pretty interesting. I mean, I definitely did stuff like that when I was around his age, so it's not that weird. Or maybe I'm just that weird. But whenever they're encountering the locals, they show them their local shrine that has these idols that are important to them. And one of them draws the boy's attention, and he makes a little offering so he can take the little idol with him. This is going to be kind of important for later. The husband tells the family to just wait at a restaurant while he thinks quickly he's going to go to the rig and back. So he gets on a boat, leaving his family all by themselves in this place they've never really been to before. Immediately the daughter gets creeped on by some dude, and the wife does not like that, and she is not afraid to show it. She's going full mama bear. The scary Mexicans scare off the family, but there's a guy with a boat, and he was willing to take him off to the rig where the husband went. When the husband arrives at the rig, he arrives and only meets 2 people, and the rig is just falling apart. It is awful. Did I say 2 survivors? I meant 3. There's a little chihuahua too. As the boat arrives, the 2 workers start panicking and fire off flares as the megalodon, it's not just a shark, it's a megalodon, is approaching the rig yet again. And the funny thing is, they talk about it. This is not just a prehistoric shark coming. It's supposed to be, like this says, El Demonio Negro. It is the physical embodiment of this demon coming to attack the rig, I guess because it didn't like what it was doing to this town or something. Family make it off onto the rig, but the boat captain is trying to flee and is eaten by the demon. Why do I have to say that instead of the shark? I'm still calling it the freaking shark. We find out that some people were actually able to escape the rig, but the radio has been down ever since, and that is part of why the guy was sent here in the first place, to figure out what was going on. It all started with an oil spill, and they were trying to report us so they could get help, but the company wasn't really doing anything about it. And it's because of this corporate to worker dynamic that immediately the workers are not that thrilled to see Paul. That's the inspector's name, Paul. These guys don't get along with Paul initially because they just see him as one of the big corporate guys that ignores what they said, thinking he's just another one of them. But it's worth pointing out the dude says, like, then why am I here? If I was really, like, that out of the loop, why would I show up here? That idol I brought up earlier, the boy gets to learn more about it from the locals there working on the rig. It's supposed to represent their god of rain, Tlaloc. Tlaloc. There's a whole bit of them trying to teach the kid how to pronounce that, Tlaloc. I can read it, but trying to say it is a lot harder than I thought it would be. Tlaloc. And this is important symbolism because he is also a god that punishes those who greedily take from nature, much like the oil rig being in the middle of this ocean, sucking the life out of the town. So we get our history lessons in the ways of the gods, where we find out more about what's been wrong on the rig and how things have just been progressively getting worse and worse, and they have not been getting the help they need, leading the situation to be as awful as it is. There's just oil everywhere, there's things ruined, and to top it off, there's a shark trying to eat everybody. And the shark is also actively ramming itself into the rig, which is a weird detail they point out several times, but it never seems to actually try to take the thing completely down, because it just kind of screws off for a lot of the movie. In an attempt to get things back online, they decide to take a look at everything on the rig itself. Paul has an understanding of how everything works, so he wants to take a look at the things underneath and even go underwater to see if there's anything they can do down there. In their effort to restore power to the rig, the 2 workers dive down. Paul actually finds a bomb attached to the rig set to destroy it in the event that, well, things went horribly and they need to get rid of this thing once and for all. One of the workers is killed, but the other makes it out, which, thank God, because he has to continue to be the father to the little chihuahua. A lot of this movie is panicking over trying to get power restored and just sitting around talking, which isn't the worst thing, honestly, but then we hardly see the shark that's shown to us so large on the cover. A lot more of the runtime is spent on this drama with the town and just family drama. And there's just some bits like just them sitting around feeding the kids some like ravioli. It's straight up Chef Boy Josefina? And I wanted to look that up. Do they seriously not have Chef Boyardee in Mexico? They had to rebrand it to not even remotely the same name? Chef Josefina? It's one of those weird little details. It's just kind of funny to see how things are around the world. It's just random crap like that. It's just so funny to me in movies. And while all the men are at work, the wife is actually doing some digging around and she finds some documents that have been signed by her husband, clearing everything, saying, oh, everything's fine on this rig. There is nothing wrong, showing that they were purposely neglecting this rig and the workers on it. She actually confronts him about it, like while they're still actively here trying to get off. It's like, you couldn't wait until you are at least away to be mad at him. So it starts assaulting and he admits, he's like, yes, I did it, but it was for the better of us. He explained it that While yes, he knew it was wrong, it was the only way he could actually have his job. He had tried to refuse and actually properly put through the paperwork, but the company simply would not let him. And what it all comes down to is that they sent him to check out the rig himself so they could blow it up with him in the process, and then they could pin everything on him, because there's plenty of documents saying he okayed the rig despite all the malfunctions and things going wrong. It is now time for their big escape plan. There's an interesting little bit where they have to fix up a raft and the daughter actually just springs in and she knew how to fix it. It's just a really random thing because there was no discerning traits for the daughter at all. And all of a sudden she knows how to survival craft a raft to get them out of there. Paul is going to plug up the leak and then set off the bomb to get rid of the rig. And he's willing to sacrifice himself to let everyone else escape. So his family and the last worker and of course the dog. Family's ready to escape and the husband said, it's like, y'all get out of here, I'm gonna go down, set off the bomb and everything. And they all pretty much know he's gonna die. And then once again, this falls into another shark movie cliche. We hardly saw the shark, we had the whole get out of the water moments, and now we're going to blow it up. Because that's the only way to kill a shark apparently, is to blow it up. He's saying his goodbyes over the radio, it's a very heartfelt, depressing, touching moment. And then the bomb goes off. And I will say, the few shots of the shark we get, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool looking. Too bad we only saw it for maybe a second at a time. And the explosion, at least it's a cool action movie explosion, I'll give it that. And they show more shots of the idols almost to say, it's like, you know what, maybe this place can thrive once again now that this evil is finally gone. The evil being the oil. Yeah, the oil rig. Which I guess this movie was supposed to be a commentary on this sort of thing, but if it was, it's a little in your face and kind of just stupid about it. Because the whole thing of the demon straight up being a shark, it doesn't even seem to be all that violent, because if it really wanted to just take down the rig, why does it just kind of tap it a few times and then like just leave like it's taking its break? It's not as present as it maybe should have been. They insist that it's this great danger, but it goes away for such long periods of time. It's like, oh, you're finally gonna try to do something? Now it'll be a problem. Whereas there's these really long stretches of there being no shark. I personally ended up giving the movie a 5 out of 10 because it really wasn't that bad. It was pretty well acted. The effects, whenever there were any, were pretty good, and it wasn't too long, so it didn't exactly waste my time. Could have been better. It could have been a little more action oriented and a little less the gods and the oil. And this wasn't exactly well favored. It has an overall rating that's pretty low from most viewers, but I guess they're in talks of maybe doing more of this idea. I don't know why they would actually do that though, so I'm just hoping this just stays the one movie. And next up is our direct-to-video entry that had a very limited theatrical run, and that movie is No Way Up. And this actually came out this year. It was released in the UK on February 12th and then in the US on the 16th. And I didn't know this till I looked it up. It had a theatrical release in Russia a month before. And then in February it released digitally and then went to a few select theaters. And this is actually going to be the cheapest film we talk about today, having a budget of only about $2 million, which is actually really low for a movie. I know that's a lot of money to casual people, but in terms of the film business, that's not that much. That's what a lot of these direct-to-video movies tend to have a budget on. Unless, of course, they get a big-name actor or half that budget goes to the big actor. And one thing I want to point out about this movie, not just necessarily the case, but the way it was being advertised, this is not much of a shark movie. They definitely push that aspect more than they probably needed to or should have. We have our opening credit sequence, and we suddenly have this woman in the water who just opens her eyes, and then we cut to some dude. I guess this is someone that was important to the woman. He was supposed to save her or something, but this will be kind of important for later, and you'll understand why I said kind of important for later. The movie follows Ava, the daughter of a politician. I think it's the governor's daughter, if I remember right. It's not gonna matter. She's going on a vacation with her boyfriend and his friends tagging along for some reason. I don't know why. The dude's really obnoxious, and I can't believe as the daughter is so important, you would even say, it's like, could we not have your friend here? Like, I get it, y'all are close. This should be an us thing, not an us thing. And she has her bodyguard. That's the guy we saw in the beginning, and that's why he was freaking out, because it turns out last time he was doing his work, the mom actually died in the accident that he was supposed to save her. We have her meet this little girl for a second that's also going on the same flight. She lost her doll and she kind of gets mad at her when the girl's running around looking for it and accidentally makes her spill her coffee on herself. Ava decides the way she reacted wasn't very nice, and she just so happens to find that doll and returns it to the girl. And the girl is British and her grandparents are American. Is she supposed to be like British raised with American family? I don't know. It's just one of those funny little details that just sticks out really bad. We get on the plane, we go through the whole thing of the flight attendants telling y'all how to do a seatbelt and all that, and the obnoxious friend is, well, being, I'm just gonna say, he's being a dick the entire time. He's one of those dudes you just kind of want to, you know, reach out. He's annoying the entire movie. 90% of when he's on screen is him being annoying. Another one of our main characters is introduced to us, this flight attendant. And immediately when I saw him, I just need to get this out of the way. He looked like several different things to me. First I thought he looked like a ventriloquist dummy. Specifically Slappy from Goosebumps. And then I thought, he kind of looks like he could be Brandon Rogers' double. I don't know what for, he just looks a lot like Brandon Rogers to me. And then the one that kept coming back to me, Nathan Kress, that one time he looked like that dog. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about this. And I just, every time he popped up, I saw that dog. It's not even like this, like necessarily like a bad looking dude or anything, it's just he looks too much like these things that I don't think I could ever see him as anything else. The flight's going, the friend's still being an ass, and then, well, things actually do go wrong like he was joking about. It's actually a pretty cool looking scene. This is probably the best part of the movie is watching the plane fall apart. Some birds get in the engine, it catches on fire, blows up, taking off a whole side of the plane, people flying out, and then people just slowly getting ripped out with their seats. And there's this one stupid bit, the other flight attendant, the lady, she goes out like she's gonna magically have the strength to pull in this guy that's holding on, just of course to die herself. Just what did you actually think you were going to do? The plane eventually crashes into the water, and it doesn't just float. It goes all the way down under the water, hitting the ocean floor. It starts filling up with water, and the few survivors there are, they make it to the back where there's an air pocket. And among our survivors are, of course, our 3 people we got on the plane with, Grandma and the little kid, the dog, and the bodyguard. At the start, the bodyguard, he takes charge. He says, this is what we need to do, this is what we're going to do. For now, because the air in here is still limited, I'm gonna go back and get this oxygen tank I saw. So he goes back and he gets it and everything, but the wife, she has the nerve when he's about to go to ask, can you get my husband's hat? And his response is just perfect.
You for fucking real, lady?
But of course, because of the nice guy he is, he actually gets the hat, but he spends way too long in the water. And you know that big hole that was in the plane that kind of set this whole thing off of being in the water and it filling up? A shark's coming through it. And this is the thing that's so annoying about that opening credit sequence. And what I said about it being kind of important. He dies here. Why did you take so long to come back? You had this whole like battle plan going and immediately you just saying, that's weird. You're just kind of swimming around like a little idiot for way too long. So of course he died because he took too damn long to get back. I thought the whole point was he was going to have his whole redemption of things going wrong on the last accident they were in. Which, why is this girl so prone to being in these accidents? So of course she's going to have this whole conflict of, is it me? It's like, is there something wrong with me? Everyone around me seems to die. Their plan now is to try and wait it out because, well, since the plane went down, someone's going to come looking for it when they realize, hey, this plane never made it where it was supposed to go. What they didn't really count on is that she is the daughter of someone very important. So of course they're going to be like, hey, wasn't she supposed to be on this plane? We need to figure out where that went. So there's actually a rescue team on helicopter going to search the waters. Meanwhile, this is where we get to the part of the movie that I really don't like. A lot of it is just kind of sitting around, panicking and being sad. It's not that great of a survival story when you're not seeing people try to survive. It's one thing for them to, like, you know, complain at the beginning, but they're just kind of whining and just finding things to cry about the entire time. This one's like, we need to pull ourselves together, do something, and they do eventually do something. By they, I mean it's always the same 2 people actually doing the hard work. One of which being the daughter, which she says some stupid... there's a line she says I really hate later. And it's very important that they came up with a plan because they have people there that know it's like, okay, we don't have that much air and the plane can only hold for so long before it collapses on us, assuming it doesn't just flood the rest of the way or we suffocate. They talk about there possibly being some scuba gear inside where they hold all the luggage, but it takes them a really long time to actually get around to that. What ends up actually happening first that changes their plans is the rescue team actually makes it to the plane. They show up in their scuba gear, but then they see the shark and they're trying to tell the guy, because they're looking through one of these little portholes, they're trying to tell him to look behind him, and the guy takes way too long to realize what the hell this means and what people screaming at you pointing means, and he turns around. Of course when, oh, yeah. So what do you think happens, huh? What do you think? He gets eaten. But then you have the other diver, it's like, okay, yeah, they both got eaten by the shark, but one of them actually made it into the plane. So their plan is like, hey, that guy had an oxygen tank with mask on him. we can use that and try to get up to the surface. They don't really know what the chances are of a follow-up coming as soon as they need them to. But their plan is in fact to try to get that tank, swim their way all the way up to the surface. They don't actually see where the second diver goes. They just assume and happen to get lucky that they do find his stuff in the plane. Like, it was just really whole by chance thing on their part, and they based their whole plan around that tank existing. And the girl makes an interesting point about the sharks that's gonna come into play later, in that apparently she learned in school that sharks are scared of bubbles. I've never heard that until this movie. I don't even know how true that is. And remember how I said that thing about we only have a select person doing everything? No. The flight attendant has ideas. Ava's the one doing everything. She goes into the hole, she swims for the gear, she even ends up being the one to go and actually get the oxygen tank despite the boyfriend trying to go and get it. But it's in one of these attempts that the boyfriend gets his leg bitten off and another really dumb thing happens. So we established that the grandma was a nurse, so she's gonna try to, you know, close up that wound, stop the bleeding and everything. Because apparently this 12-year-old or whatever she's supposed to be hasn't seen enough. She says, "Can you go stand outside while we do this? You know, away, but be away from the sharks." You know what outside is in that little room they're held up in? The water. She's standing in the water where there's already blood, so that shark's probably gonna come up regardless. So you have all these adults crowding this one room around the guy panicking because, you know, part of his leg isn't where it should be. Why would you even suggest that? You could have just made her turn around. I mean, she already saw it, people die. Like, I don't think things could possibly get worse for her vision from here. The boyfriend, he dies here. And this is when Ava says something really stupid.
You always tried so hard to be brave. I've never had to be brave.
I know you don't want to talk badly of anyone, obviously, but don't go making up stuff about people. She talked about him being so brave. He did nothing. He maybe tried a couple times, but he did nothing. He cried and complained just as much as everybody else, if not more. And she's doing all this like she's so helpless, whatever. No, girl. You've been doing everything. You've been getting supplies. You've been rallying people up. You've been getting people to stay together and not freak out and just go off and die. But no, she keeps playing helpless to the end, and I think it's really dumb. You would think she would eventually have that character growth, but no. She's ignoring what she's doing, and she's an annoying character for that. She's playing helpless despite being the hero, kind of. The plane starts going down even further into the ocean, causing more and more water to build up. It starts off a little more slow, so they still got some time to get moving, but they take so long to get moving. Well, their plan now is to share the oxygen tank, trading off the mask whenever they can. The little oxygen tank, they're gonna pop those open to set off bubbles. So we're trying to go. Grandma decides, you know what, I'm gonna go down with the ship for some reason. My husband died. My granddaughter's alone and helpless. Come on, you're not gonna try for the kid. So now we're down to the main girl, the friend, the little girl, and the dog. I'm sorry, I can't not see that. Of course his name is freaking Kyle. He panics like last second. He starts to go, but then he's like, hey, where the hell's grandma at? Because she didn't really like explain that to everybody. She's like, y'all just go ahead, y'all just go ahead. So he goes back and like you're made by, it's like, is he going back for her? No, he just can't do it. And he explained earlier, he's just been scared ever since he almost drowned in a pool many years ago. And of course, it's in his moment of panic, he just gets eaten. They start using more and more of the bubbles, and that seems to actually work, which is a pretty interesting thing. So the flight attendant and the girl get out of the plane and set themselves up to make their way to the surface. They're going to pull open their life vest and use that to start floating their way up. They do it pretty much as soon as they get out, and the dumbest thing about this is that she watches the flight attendant and the girl fly up to the surface, and she just kind of watches and takes way too long. It's like, you couldn't have gotten out with them. And then we have this drawn out sequence of her swimming around to a point where she should have definitely died from trying to hold her breath. She manages to swim out of the plane as it's going down, and we get to see it crash. It's kind of cool looking visual, I guess. Barely makes it to the surface, running out of oxygen right there. It's just, how did you not die beforehand? And this did not have to happen to you if you were just a little quicker. I know they wanted to add some tension, drama, thrill, whatever the hell. It's just really dumb timing that they forced in there for the sake of doing so, and I hate stuff like that. She of course doesn't die because we can't have our hero of the story die. She comes to at the surface, but she realizes she's all by herself, but that's because the helicopters made it. The other two are already rescued, and she's the next one up to get pulled out. And this whole thing is like, oh, we really did this, we made it out. The little girl ends up throwing her bear into the water because she's like, my grandpa said he would want him with them. In the end, we also lost. Mr. Tibbs. So out of everyone on this plane, only 3 people made it out. One of the employees, child, and the one person that was important enough for people to come looking for them. I think especially after coming off the Black Demon, I didn't have the highest of expectations for this one, knowing it was in the similar ballpark as to what type of movie I could expect to get. It was actually kind of okay. I also ended up giving this a 5. I've seen people that watched this were slightly more favorable to this, but not so much. It's an interesting movie for what it is, and again, it doesn't really waste your time or anything, but it kind of feels like it does with how much of the movie is them just sitting around crying. The few moments where it really is a survival movie and they're trying to survive, it's a little interesting. The setting itself is pretty cool, but they really push the idea of the whole being trapped by sharks thing a little too much in the poster and the overall advertising, which of course is what got people to go watch it, but that's not really what you're getting. And our third and last movie today is actually a Netflix original, Under Paris. And this is also going to be the first and maybe only foreign language movie that we're going to go over this week. The movie is in fact a French movie made by the director Xavier Gens. I actually don't know how to say his last name, but I'm familiar with him. He's known more for horror and action type stuff, so it seems right up his alley. And this being a Netflix original, that means this went straight to streaming, and this was made on a budget of around $20 million, making this our highest budget film. So we have $2, $10, and $20 million to work with each of these films. Our movie starts with a research team checking out some sharks that they've tracked down to a place that's quite literally garbage. Which if you look it up, these places are real, and it's pretty depressing and disgusting. They dive down through the garbage and they're looking for the shark that they actually have a tracker on to do some more research on it. As they're trying to follow their shark, they notice something strange. There's a whole group of them now, but they're acting a little different. Not only is the behavior strange, they realize the shark is way bigger than it should be considering the last time they saw it. They assume the shark is non-aggressive like usual and they try to get a sample, but then things start going wrong immediately. And it's one of those moments where it's like, you're not realizing what's wrong because they're asking, it's like, hey, what's going on right there? Do you think I'd be panicking just because there's a shark swimming by, or do you think maybe it went jaws on me? The whole team down in the water starts getting eaten, and then the last girl on top, she starts trying to go down with the friend trying to tell us like, hey, don't go down there. For some reason, this girl thinks, you know what, the shark's gonna behave different with me. I'm gonna dive down and finish this off real quick. Let me see what's going wrong. Of course, she gets caught up in some of the garbage and then gets dragged off by the shark in a moment that should have absolutely killed her. Like, we even see the force of being pulled down, the pressure from all that. Her ears are bleeding. She's definitely losing all of her air as this is happening. She magically makes it up to the surface and we get our title. And I guess I should start using names, especially because I need to at least name our main character, Sophia. A few years later, we see Sophia's working at an aquarium. While on the job, she is met by a local environmentalist running a team to help save the sharks. Specifically, their organization is called Save Our Seas, and they're doing environmental work to be sure we keep our oceans clean and safe for the creatures within. She informs Sophia that her shark has swam all the way from the Pacific, where she last saw it, into Paris. As unlikely as that seems, considering it's a completely different environment, not only in location, but going from saltwater to freshwater. And not only were we being introduced to Paris and the idea of the shark being here, we were also shown some guys fishing in the water for whatever treasures they could find, and they pulled up some old bombs. And this is going to be an important detail for later, but this also just to show you how disgusting the Paris River is. It's amazing they don't have their own little garbage islands floating around right there the way they're acting. The next thing that kicks off their adventure to continue searching for the shark in the river is that there was a car accident, and they believe that because the guy never came up and nothing happened of it, that the shark is down there possibly attacked. The environmentalist and her girlfriend set off to go check out where the crash happened to see what's going on under the water. She does find the boat and she does find the car, and it shows signs that it was in fact attacked by a shark, but then the police pull up to get them out. The girlfriend goes off while the other girl, she stays behind and is trying to, I don't know, was she trying to avoid the cops? Because she pops up at the worst possible time. She gets arrested, of course, because you're not supposed to be in the water. And the cop here, he's also one of our main guys. His job is essentially to watch and protect the riverside. He's trying to figure out, it's like, what were you even doing there? Was that your boat? All this stuff. We meet this little group while she's getting arrested and they're taking her bag. It's just a group of homeless guys that they help out and come meet with every now and then, and they just happen to like make their place by the river right there. But something strange we see later on, all those homeless guys are gone, so we can only assume they were eaten by the sharks, but that's never really solved. But one point I'll give them here, they didn't eat the dog. Hold on, Do we have 3 separate shark movies that have a dog and the dog doesn't die? I'm really sorry to you, No Way Up dude. You just look too much like the Nathan Kress dog to me. And a part of the big deal about all this stuff happening in the river and the police being so active in this area is that they're getting ready to hold an event for the Olympics here, which very timely, and the director was very aware of this. He did not just want to poke fun at Paris, the government, but also just the Olympics happening there. He's like, you know what? How can I make fun of all these things in one weird package? While she's in custody, the girl's trying to explain, it's like, there's a shark down there and we're trying to find it so we can set it free back in the ocean where it belongs. The cop of course doesn't believe, but that is when Sophia comes into play and says like, no, we have a tracker on this shark, we need to get her out of here. And the next course of action is actually go check this out and try to get the shark moving. After taking a look around where the car crash happened, they find a body that shows signs of a shark attack. This leads to the police saying, it's like, alright, you're right, there's a shark in here, we need to go down there and kill it. But of course the environmentalists don't want that to happen, but Sophia's just there because she knows that they need to get that shark out of there one way or another. Something interesting that they showed that the environmentalists can do, not only are they able to find these trackers and follow them around, but they can also deactivate them whenever they want. So the environmentalist, when she realizes that Sophia went off with the cops that want to go kill it, she calls up her girlfriend and says, I need you to turn off the tracker. What is your plan after? Because all she cares about, she doesn't want them to kill the shark. That's all she's concerned about, is making sure the shark lives. Not the fact that it's already here eating people, but that the shark deserves to live more so than the people of Paris. We need to know where the shark is if we're trying to take it out. Because a big part of them being able to turn off the trackers, they're not all that sure they can turn them back on. So during their search, Sophia's tracking it on our laptop, and then she sees that the shark just suddenly disappears. She loses all sight of it because the tracker was deactivated. But I will say, give the girlfriend some credit. She was trying to resist for as long as she could, but she knew eventually she was going to give in. This leads to some of them getting attacked, narrowly escaping. Because they were unable to take out the shark in this first go, they try to please the mayor. It's like, we need to postpone the event being held for the Olympics. But of course the mayor's refusing. It's like, you know how much money we put in this? Do you know what we would look like if we said, there's something wrong? We maybe need to back down from the stupid event of, this is what the event is, swimming down the garbage river. Good use of resources, dumbass. The police are told to back off and they're just going to act on their own, essentially doing what they should be on any normal day. But you already know, they're going to go track down that shark and do their own thing, even if they're not supposed to. The environmentalists' next plan is to make use of the city's catacombs to try to lure the shark into one space using sonar. This whole video comes out about them saying, you know what, we need to save the sharks, and this rallies up plenty of people that some supporters actually come down to the catacombs with her to see this shark as they try to lure it to them so they can eventually use that same method to lure it out of the city and back into open water. The police make their way through the catacombs and find where they're holding this event, coming in to tell people, y'all need to evacuate right now, this is a police business, please in orderly fashion. But of course she says like, no, we're doing this right now. And she sets off the pulse that lures in the shark. It works! But then they find... So first our shark comes in, you know, it's like, it's swimming around doing this little sharky thing, and then its baby comes in, and well, they're hostile, because we didn't know that already. They're there to eat, so people start panicking, and the worst things happen. It just shows how awful people are, because this is 100% believable this is how people would do this. Not only are they panicking, they know it's a very tight space. There's really only one way out of this little reservoir they're in. People are really climbing on each other, pushing other people over, and then the girlfriend actually dies here in a really messed up way. She just essentially gets stomped to death. It's pretty messed up, which kind of sucks because I kind of liked her because she was reasonable, unlike her girlfriend, which thank God she gets eaten. One of the cops gets taken out. It's pretty upsetting because these cops are actually doing their job, doing what they're supposed to be, saving these people and getting this shark out of here. So this sets off a pretty good precedent of, well, I don't think anyone's really Team Shark in Paris anymore, especially with the leader being taken out by said shark. And it appears the sharks are having a little Jurassic Park thing going on. They're all female, but you know, life finds a way. And now we have a ton of babies. And despite several pleas with the dumb mayor, she still insists, like, no, we can't do anything that could harm the event. I don't want you doing anything now. This is now a military matter. They'll be working our security for the event. So they devise a new plan that's going to occur during the Olympics event itself. They're going to lure the shark back to the catacombs to try to see if they can blow it up. And because it's going to be completely off the books, they need people to volunteer. They don't force anyone, but most people are up for it. One guy has a pretty good reason not to be in it, saying, I got a family, I can't really afford to risk myself. Reasonable. But the rest of them volunteer because of the guy that died to one of the sharks already. Their plan seems to be working, they have all the explosives set, but then what they find out is that there are way more sharks than they thought. Because in that first attack that they really saw, it was, you know, mama shark, baby shark. But when they're in there, there are tons and tons of baby sharks down there with them. So they get all these explosives set up, but they're like, we can't move yet or these things are going to eat us. Meanwhile, during this, the swim has already started, and again, like, the director was having a good time with this movie. He's like, what's something really funny I could do? You know what? Have people swim in the river that we know is disgusting. Because apparently Paris is not as clean as it used to be. That's something I read about a lot, so it's interesting seeing someone make a movie about that from France. What kicks off the next big part of this right here is one of the cops says, like, no, we can't wait. We gotta set this off. So he gets everything ready, he gets attacked, and this leads to everyone else getting torn up by the sharks too. The explosives do go off, seemingly killing all the sharks that were inside, but of course, the big mama, she made it out. The cops Sophia are rescued by boat thanks to their friends that were waiting outside for their extraction. But then the shark comes in, flips over the boat, and kills their last two cop friends, so now it really is just the main cop and Sophia. The shark then goes off to the event, and it starts eating the swimmers. Not only are a lot of guys dying, it causes a huge panic to the people spectating. The shark eventually finds its way to the stage, people are falling in and out of the water, trying to get out, people are running into each other, over each other, and thankfully the mayor's one of the people in trouble getting knocked around. Our main cop starts trying to warn the military there. It's like, hey, y'all cannot fire because there's still live bombs under the water that have never been taken out. And if they do anything to disturb those, it could set off a bunch of explosions. That is ignored, and the military is attempting to shoot down the shark. This shark is fast and furious, just going through the water, messing with the boats, just messing with anything that's in the water. Eventually, a combination of the gunfire and the way the shark is swimming around, it knocks around enough of the bombs in such a way that they blow up. And this sequence is so cool, and it's insanely over the top and kinda dumb. And this explosion is so massive, it causes tons of people to collapse, fall into the water, all this. And then the craziest things happens. It makes a tsunami. A huge wave goes off and just floods the entire city. We do see that our cop and Sophia did survive and are on this little rooftop of some building, but then we see, no, they did not get anywhere near close to killing all of the sharks. Not only was our main shark still alive, there were plenty of others swimming around too, and it just seems really cool. I really like seeing this part. And then we see in the end credits, it shows off like these sharks are everywhere, going to all these places. Wherever there's water and they can get in, the sharks are just taking over. So that was Under Paris. I actually liked this movie. I can't even say it was just fun. I straight up enjoyed the movie. I don't know why people are being so weirdly mixed and negative on it. I give this one a 7. It's pretty fun. I like the idea. The characters were not necessarily annoying, the ones that were. It made sense that they were annoying. You weren't supposed to like them. Likeable enough cast, you hate the characters you're supposed to hate, the stuff happening is pretty wild and fun to watch. It didn't have to be totally serious. Like, it looks serious, but the stuff happening is just so insane and over the top. It's just fun to watch. The shark felt like a real threat. It really felt present in like some of these other movies. It was just a good time all around. And the way the movie ends, it's like, oh, it's over, but then you see the shark swimming around. I'm like, are they gonna try to do a sequel to this? And I had the idea, it's like, this one's called Under Paris. What if they do a follow-up? They're probably gonna call it Paris Under. And then I found a review with the director. He said there wasn't necessarily plans for a sequel, but seeing how things have gone over, he thinks that it could be in the talks very soon that they could be making a movie about Paris underwater. So when that movie finished and I found that review, it's like, I was so right. And I'm so glad seeing this dude's like on that same wavelength. It's like, let's just keep going into the absurdity of this. I think there's not enough movies that really dig enough into that, but I think this one really did. So at the end, what do we think of movies releasing the way they do versus how much money is put into them? So while it kind of sucks to say, I can say the best movie out of this lot was in fact the most expensive one to produce. I think it was largely not just the scope of what they were doing. They were actually shooting in Paris, obviously, and there was a lot of special effects, particularly digital, were involved. And while, yes, I guess it's a little obvious it was digital effects, they looked really good for what they were, especially with a lot of other recent releases. Not to say the effects in no way up or the Black Demon are necessarily worse or anything. Both of these had a good plot for a lot of action that happened, but this one, you hardly see the shark. You're mostly watching people whine about an oil rig. This one, you're watching people crying around a plane. At least they were actually in like a flooded plane set, so it looked pretty convincing. But then for the Netflix movie, of course, you had the grander scope of the fact that they could go to all these other locations. That, and they could make use of not only putting in more effects, but making them look a little nicer too. But then when it comes to our lower budget efforts, I think No Way Up definitely outshines The Black Demon. because it did way more of what it had versus this movie having a $10 million budget. So this one, I don't think the money matters as much, but it does in fact get you somewhere. But if you're smart about it, you can get away with a smaller budget. Now in terms of release, so The Black Demon is the only one that had a wide theatrical release, but it did not see any success until it was streaming and on demand. Whereas No Way Up, it seemed to have fared somewhat decently as what it is, just a direct-to-video movie. But in this day and age, it seems that the king is going to still be your big streaming services like Netflix. People seem a lot more excited for those than one that goes straight to DVD and streaming without having that Netflix label on it. To summarize, the money doesn't matter too much, but it can really get you somewhere. But if you're smart about it, you can get away with a lower budget. As far as the way things release, unless you have big names, the theater's probably not the way to go, but you can get away with an interesting plot on something like Netflix. If you enjoyed what you saw, leave a like, subscribe, and share the video. If you have something to say, feel free to leave something in the comments below. This is also only the first part of Sharks Week 2024, so be sure to come back tomorrow for some more shark action. I'm Shyboy 616, this is Like a Shark, and we will see you next time.